Another weapon also much in use in Italy, the Priest mobile gun. The old method of drawing field guns into action backwards and turning them round is outdated by the self-propelled piece of artillery. And while on the subject of weapons...
Today I'd like to go over the missing artillery of another nation in War Thunder, the United States. America has its own lineage of self-propelled artillery, and I see no reason some or all of these could not be fairly represented in the game. While America is most famous of course for our air power, sufficient artillery support was always given to ground units as well. The majority of that will of course always be towed guns, but there are enough tracked vehicles to go over as well. This video will cover two eras, the Second World War and into the early Cold War. I'll start with arguably the most famous of the period, the M7 HMC, sometimes known as the Priest. Soon after World War II began, the Army decided they would need a tracked artillery platform to properly support armored advances. Failures experienced by older platforms, such as the T-19, made it clear that these vehicles would need to be fully tracked and armored. The M3 Lee's chassis was chosen as the base for the new gun platform, and soon after the test model T-32 was finished. The gun chosen was the 105mm M2A1 howitzer. Soon after, the M7 HMC was officially completed, and nearly 6,000 were ordered by Britain alone. After the development of the M4 Sherman, production of the M7 switched to that chassis as well. The M7 saw service in Western Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific, where it served well and was generally well liked by its crews. After the war, it was supplanted by the M37 HMC, a similar vehicle based on the chassis of an M24 Chaffee, which it served alongside in Korea. This vehicle would fit well into rank 2 or 3, being a somewhat armored yet open-top design with a moderately powerful howitzer. Moving on to larger guns, we have perhaps the most ridiculous design of the list, the M40 GMC, also built on the chassis of a Sherman. This mounted a 155mm M2 howitzer in a nearly entirely exposed platform, which replaced the older M12 GMC, which used a French-derived gun of the same caliber. Only a single vehicle served in Europe, where it served alongside a similar vehicle, the T-89 HMC, which would later be designated M43 HMC. 311 of the ordered 600 M40s were completed. 24 of these vehicles would be converted to M43s. Despite its large open size, the M40 could carry a total of 20 rounds of ammunition before needing to be restocked. The M40 would be fine at rank 3, where its large gun but bulky size would render it deadly but highly vulnerable. Downsizing from the previous entry, we come to the M41 HMC, based on the M24 platform. Contrary to its appearance, the M41 mounts a 155mm howitzer. Originally designed to be used on an M5 Stuart, the project to mount a heavy artillery gun on a light chassis was changed to an extended M24 after it was decided that the platform would be the standard light tank in future conflicts. The tank was outfitted with a 155mm M1 gun and a heavy recoil-absorbing spade in the rear for firing. Though its horizontal traverse was somewhat limited, it had about 45 degrees of vertical traverse and could store 22 rounds of ammunition in the vehicle. The firing platform lacked any kind of notable armor. After work was completed on the M41, an order of 250 was placed. Only 85 would be produced before cancellation, but the completed vehicles would go on to serve in Korea before ultimately being replaced and retired. Despite this, it was well liked for being mobile and armored, something the US Army would increasingly prefer over towed guns. The M41 HMC could be fine in rank 3. The successor of the Chaffee was also the successor of the M41. Based on the chassis of the Walker Bulldog, the M44 was yet another 155mm howitzer based on a light tank. As the Korean War came to a close, the Army sought to replace their older artillery platforms with modern designs. This new self-propelled platform was designed to be entirely enclosed to provide crews with adequate protection against battlefield threats. A new cannon was installed, a modified version of the 155mm M114, which included a recoil reduction system and moved most components into the hull. A total of 24 rounds of ammunition could be stored in total. After the first 250 vehicles were produced, it was discovered that gases from firing the gun were causing significant harm to the crew inside, so the firing compartment was changed to an open design, which alleviated the issue. This caused them to miss the Korean War, but they were maintained in service until an eventual replacement, or exported to US allies in Europe. This vehicle would serve well in Rank 4 as an accompaniment for the Walker Bulldog. Finally, we come to the modern American platform for American artillery. I would be remiss to omit the M109 series of artillery, yet the service length of the platform demands its own video, so for now, I'll acknowledge that any number of variants of the M109 might be added, from an early M109 model similar to the Japanese Type 75, to more recent models such as the M109A6. Many of these vehicles could be fun additions to War Thunder. None seem to be too unbalanced in my eyes, and they would be a different way to play in the American tree. If you enjoyed this overview of American artillery, please give this video a like. If you want to see more content like this in the future, subscribe to the channel. Thank you.